Welcome to Salt. And here's Miranda.
Yes, well, technically we were starting right on time until somebody had low blood sugars.
Low blood sugar.
So we had to take the time out for a snack.
Yep.
And then our cat was sitting there watching the ceiling ever so intently. So Brent went over and there was some ant or something, he said, crawling on the ceiling. So he went to do battle and who knows what happened. It disappeared. So here we are.
Well, and we're hoping our cat is going to be cat-like and hunt it down and
Yes, well, she's pretty good at it.
dispose of it.
Yes.
So anyway, yay. So I hope you're having a good Sabbath. And did it rain today?
I don't think so, no.
It just looked like it was supposed to. I think the weather said it was going to rain and then it didn't. Yep.
Pretty classic.
Yep. But yeah. So Miranda, what are we talking about today?
Oh, what are we talking about? Well, what do they call it? We're talking about time and Laodicea.
Yeah, it was Sabbath school today was about
The rich and powerful.
yeah. If you're going along with the Sabbath school lesson, they're talking about evangelism and outreach, and I don't know, last week was mission
basically.
something.
Mm-hmm.
Last week was mission to, I don't know, mission to somebody.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was a very powerful presentation, made a lasting impression.
Yes. And this week was mission to the powerful.
Yes,
And
mission to the
wealthy.
powerful and wealthy.
And in a couple weeks, if anybody is teaching from the Adult Quarterly on the 16th of this month, we are.
We are teaching.
Yes. And so, sometimes I get some ideas for salt from the Sabbath school lesson. And so, yeah, we got drawn a little bit. This would not be all of what we would do for Sabbath school, but might be part of it.
Yeah,
so
kinda fits in.
if you want some new ideas or new thoughts or different something.
Yeah, something.
Anyways,
No, we'll be doing that. When is that?
the 16th.
The 16th.
Yeah. So, and that was mission to the inner city.
Right. Inner
So
city mission.
we're not exactly talking about inner city today.
No, it was. Well, it was interesting that when we started off, the mission to the powerful, wealthy, basically. I mean, it was. I don't know. It was. First of all, just there were some things said in Sabbath school that I knew out and out was not true, and my beautiful democratic keep the peace wife counseled me not to say anything, and so I didn't.
I'd already stopped myself from saying something, so
Yeah, occasionally it's like, it is interesting though sometimes because you listen to people and you know where they're getting information from and you know how wrong it is, and you just sit there and like, it's not worth throwing a grenade into the Sabbath school. And but it just reminds you to, in today's world especially, to be a very wary consumer of information, because information has just changed in the last 5 years, and even within the last few years, and you just have to be like really conscientious on making sure what you're getting is true and accurate, because so much today is marketing, and even it's gotten so big in the news agencies, it's just about how do I get people to click the news line, how do I get them to click the headline, and that's where the money comes from. And so it's even to the point of news stations and news things putting in stuff and they make it look like news and it's really an ad, and
yeah, that one's annoying.
oh, it's so frustrating.
Yeah, I'm sure I mentioned that before once, but it was like, 42 things to make your life easier or something like that, and clicked on it, and it was all this stuff that you could buy on Amazon. 42 things to help you organize your kitchen or something like that. And I was like, oh my goodness, if I bought all 42 of those things, my life would just become more complicated, because some of it you would have to actually put together, and then you would actually have to organize your stuff. And, I just thought, no, I don't even need one of those.
I don't. Do you ever see the headlines with the ones, you know, 23 things I learned today in my little brain that blew me away, and you will drop
No.
everything and
No, that I don't.
doesn't that
no.
just does it annoy you? It doesn't draw me. It makes me
No.
think I would never click that.
Yeah, it's true.
And how does that get people? Are there people that really go, oh, I gotta?
I think so. Yeah, yeah. Though I've run across in the news. Well, it comes up on the news feed, I suppose, because I've clicked on it a time or two. But
Yeah.
My personality type.
Oh, yeah.
And the Myers-Briggs personality type. So I've found some of that kind of interesting, which I hadn't really dove into that too much before. But yeah, it's interesting to go, yeah, okay, so that's true, that is me.
Yeah.
And I didn't really understand that before. But so it's helpful to see some of that.
I almost went into journalism when I was at Southern. It was one of the things I considered, and I would hate myself if I worked for like BuzzFeed and I had to write headlines like that. Like, click on this and you'll never think the same again, and all these ridiculous headlines and but and that just kind of reminded me in the culture we're in today, in society and today. But they were talking about, well, it was like the evangelism, the outreach to the rich and the powerful, and how, well, I know we got into that the challenge about evangelism to the uber wealthy and stuff is that one of the first things you need for evangelism to work is a person has to sense their need. And if they don't have a need, it's like, well, why do I need what you're selling,
It's true. Like, oh, those 43 things I need for my kitchen.
Yeah.
I didn't sense my need for that.
Yeah.
Didn't.
I wasn't feeling the emptiness for those kitchen items.
My bank account did not need to be empty.
Yeah, it felt empty,
any of that.
Which is why we didn't have.
Yeah. Well, it's probably part of the reason I didn't feel a need for any of those things, yes.
But as I kick stuff around, it made me think about perspective. It's a matter of perspective that I'm wealthy. I don't feel like I need anything. I can buy or do whatever I want. I was talking about, like in Aspen, Colorado, being so wealthy, people they can do things and they don't really suffer any consequences for it, But that's really, I started thinking that's more like, your perspective of the world and life is like this. And as you read, the headlines, I was just, before we got on, I was reading about Russia's calling up, I think, 170,000 more troops, for the war in Ukraine. And there was a short little video clip about a reporter was asking one of the, a congresswoman about Israel and Hamas, and there's huge numbers of Palestinians living in Gaza that are being killed, women and children, because Hamas hides behind them, and in this and he was asking about the consequences Israel should face for that, and they were defending Israel because it's Hamas really doing it, and all of that, and it made me think the perspective of people in the world that life is so, not so life is so cheap, but this war, we must stop NATO. This land must be ours. This must be, and that perspective is so focused on wanting, having, getting, owning, and it reminded me of the astronauts when they first got to the moon and they looked back and they took the picture. It's a famous picture, you've probably seen it 1,000 times. It's called Earthrise. And it goes, we always see moonrise, but they took one where the Earth then was coming up on the horizon. And it changes their perspective of life. Because then they look at Earth and it's like, wow, that is so unique and different in the vast emptiness of the universe. It is so special, and we're all on it together. And those in the International Space Station look at it, and they look at that very, very thin layer of atmosphere that separates, space from Earth, and how easy it would be for that to be gone and for all life on Earth to be wiped out. And last week, while you guys are in Whole Foods, and I was once again eating so I didn't go into a diabetic coma, I was listening to an NPR thing about how life started. And it was interesting because it was from two, they don't, not believe in creation, they believe in evolution, right? And so, and I studied evolution, and, it was the first time I'd heard it explained so specifically, and how life would have had to start. And they go through the steps, and like first there was this, and there was this, and this. And about, 5 or 6 steps that they got into. And we're talking about, single cell organisms and, coming together. And in 5 or 6 of those steps, it was like, and this never happens. It doesn't, it would be so out of the ordinary for this. It was such a, monstrosity of odds for this to happen. Boom, and it happened. And the next one was like, and even more unique was that it, boom, and it, and it was this ongoing thing of, how life must have started. And whether you're, evolutionist or creationist, God created life, or trust me, when they say it takes more faith to believe in evolution than creation, it really does. If you were listening to these guys, you're thinking, and you think that actually happened or could have, anyway. But how precious life really is. And if you had that perspective of how special, any life is on the planet, and then how special the planet is, and how God would have created all this and made all this, it just seems like it would shift your perspective on wars and how we treat not just other people, but other cultures and other countries, knowing that we all came and live on the same place. And I was thinking, that's the perspective like wealthy people are missing, in that I'm the same as anybody else. I have this stuff that we've all agreed is called money, and I can do things with it, but my life is the same as anybody else's life. Just a matter of shifting your perspective, and what you do with your time in your life.
Yes, long pause as I'm thinking about what Brett says. I know what he's done is he's setting you up, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And here we go.
Yes. Okay. So the thought I'm focusing on today, and you will hear this more than once, is stewardship of time isn't about squeezing productive activity into every moment of life. It's about putting meaningful life into each activity.
Which is my point.
Yes.
That was what I was serving up.
Yes. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm here for you.
Yes, and see, so I asked Brad before we started, I was like, do you have anything interesting you're going to say?
And that wasn't interesting.
And he said no.
It was just information.
Okay. I thought it was interesting.
Well, I thought your tagline was really good. And say it again.
Stewardship of time isn't about squeezing productive activity into every moment of life.
Which most of us, if we're honest, that's how we live.
It's true. And it's so easy for me to get sucked into that for the day, even though I don't go off to work. Wow, it's just like, oh, how much more can I get done between breakfast and the time I have to get in the shower? Or, well, if I just do one more thing, and next thing you know, it's lunch. It's lunch and I haven't got any writing done. Yeah. And that sort of thing. And it's like, well, then I got the afternoon. It seems to come and go. It can come and go if I'm not careful about it, right? Yeah. And so stewardship of time isn't about squeezing productive activity into every moment of life. It's about putting meaningful life into each activity. Meaningful life into each activity.
Yeah. I really like that.
Yeah. So, like I said, we're borrowing a couple ideas here from the Sabbath School Quarterly for the lesson that will be taught on December the 16th. So basically it talks about mission to the inner city, though we're not really touching on that. Yeah. It's in my opinion, it's not necessarily where you do mission, it's how you do mission. Right. And so it's let me see what your numbers are.
108.
Okay.
We have to keep checking my numbers because when we start low, we got to make sure we get it up high enough that I don't, pass out.
So it talks about Jesus taking his disciples to the borders of Israel, And this Canaanite woman comes, she knows he's there. So she comes out and she is begging him to heal her daughter because her daughter is demon possessed. And he ignores her, utterly ignores her. And then the disciples come up to him and they're like, Jesus, make her go away. She's causing all this noise and a ruckus. I mean, this is not good. Send her away. And then Jesus answered and he says, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So he's saying, I was sent to only help the Israelites, he says to the woman. So what are you doing here? You need to just go. Though he didn't say that specifically, but he meant that, right? She came and began to bow down before him, saying, Lord, help me. She sees him, and he is, rightfully so, the only one left to help her. She's gone to see other people to help, and none of them can do anything for her demon-possessed daughter. So this is her only help. She's heard about what Jesus can do and has done. So she's like, oh, Lord, help me. You're the only one who can help me. And he answered, and he says, it is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. And she said, yes, Lord, but please help, for even the dogs feed on the crumbs that fall from their master's table. Then Jesus said to her, O woman, your faith is great, and it shall be done for you as you desire. And her daughter was healed at once. Okay, so
that seems harsh.
It does when you first just read it like that, or you hear the story, and it just sounds, you're like, what on earth was going on here? But if you take a closer look, basically, this was Jesus holding up a mirror to his disciples, because he starts out treating this Canaanite woman exactly as the Jews would ordinarily treat her. And the disciples are clearly in full agreement with this, because they're like, not only is he ignoring her, he needs to send her away. Send her away. She is bothersome and not worthy of taking up their time, right? She's disturbing the peace, basically. And so then he shows them who he wants them to be. He wants them to extend grace and mercy to those who aren't Jews, who are people who are pagans, basically, and they feel as though are not worthy of attention from God.
And that would have been a big deal in that culture. Obviously, you probably know that, because we talk about the Samaritan woman and that, but our Phoenician woman would have been even way below the Samaritan.
Yeah, they weren't people that God was going to forgive. Right? And so, I know we talked about the book of Jonah not too long ago, and I think Jonah ends the book with the same approach that Jesus used with the Canaanite woman here.
So a lot of times you read the book of Jonah, and I've heard it, most of my life, and and Jonah never got it. Jonah did not, and Jonah was, at the end, even after all that God did, and he was just, too hard-headed, too hard-hearted, too whatever, and he never, saw the light, basically. And yet what you were saying was
right.
Different.
So basically, when you look at the end, if Jonah wrote the book of Jonah, which is probably what happened, why was he hanging out all of his dirty laundry for everybody to see?
Yeah.
If that just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Why would he end it that way?
Yeah, why would he end it that way? Why would he make himself look bad like that?
Yeah, because there really is no conclusion. There's the tree dies and whatever, and it just leaves it there.
So basically, if we were to say if we were to say possibly that Jonah in the end got it, that he got it, and I mean, because it certainly wasn't for lack of trying on God's part. God tried, did he not? Oh, he made it abundantly obvious how Jonah should be treating the Ninevites. I mean, he told him one to go. He when Jonah tried to avoid that, he got him there through a very unusual way, right? And then that whole vine growing up and all this kind of stuff like that. And clearly, the Ninevites did repent, and God did forgive them. And Jonah clearly had needed his own forgiveness and mercy from God in this whole process, right? Plus, Jonah was a true prophet of God. So we know that. He was a true prophet, okay? So he wasn't stupid. I mean, God had taught him things before, no doubt, and God had worked on his behalf. God had spoken to the man on multiple occasions, right, with prophecies that came true. And so what if Jonah did have a change of heart? And everybody, all his contemporaries who were going to be reading this book, knew that. And so when he leaves it there, they recognize that that is who they are. So they can take their own moment of reflection and say, is this who I want to be?
Yeah. And it's like, we still do a lot of that today in movies and books and especially parables and, morality plays and stuff. It's, you bring something to an end like that and you just leave it because you get much more of a emotional reaction from whoever's reading and like, what? That's it? And it really makes them question, to the point of what you're actually trying to say. Like, well, that was, terrible. And so it would have been a great, way to make the point. Jonah was like, how do you feel about that? And take a look, a reflective look at yourself.
Right. It would have been a lot like the prophet who came to David after David had sinned with Bathsheba,
right,
and told him the story about the little lamb.
Yeah. Same thing.
And David was like, "Why? That's horrible.
Yeah.
That's terrible, and justice needs to be served." And then the prophet says to him, "Well,
you are the man.
See, is reflection.
Yeah.
You're looking in the mirror."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. I don't know. You look at Jonah like that and you go like, oh, wow, that's powerful. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, if that's how it ended like that, and he did that intentionally, the man was a great writer.
Yeah. A
great writer. Yes. So we're going to switch stories in the Bible right this minute. Just prepare you for that. So we're going to talk about the sower here for just a moment. I know the sower has...
What? Again?
Yes,
the
again.
Sower?
It has 4 different sections, but we're just going to touch on the first one as an example of what we're talking about. So the first part is where the sower comes along and he sows a seed and they fall on the wayside and the birds come along and eat them. And the wayside is there next to the path where it's really hard, beaten down by the people who have walked on by and such. And I used to think that this represented basically the non-Christian for the most part, the person who wasn't interested in God at all, because of course the seeds represented the words of God. And so sure, the words of God fell into their life, but they weren't interested, and so their lives didn't change over that because they just moved on. But this, when you think about it, this could also represent people who are satisfied with who they are, and they don't need anything else. So they may be God's words, but they don't need them. Okay, so because when Jesus was here on this earth, the Jewish leaders in particular, right? They had truth. They were God's people. They kept the law. They were good people, right? And so what else did they need? They were in need of nothing else. So same with the Jewish people at the time of Jonah and the Ninevites, right? They were good people, keeping the law of God, and they were God's very own chosen people. They did not need to love people like the Ninevites. They did not need to forgive people like the Ninevites because they were good people and it was them who were bad. And they would see the Ninevites as people that even God wouldn't forgive.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
For the things that they had done. So I'm going to go back to our original thought there that we started with. Stewardship of time isn't about squeezing productive activity into every moment of life. It's about putting meaningful life into each activity. So the Jews were so focused on keeping the letter of the law that they left behind the life of the law. And when the life of the law is not being lived out, what happens? Yes, okay. So we may think we look all hot fire on the outside, right? But on the inside, we are lukewarm, pretty satisfied with who we are. So does this remind you of anybody else?
Those Ninevites.
Okay, right. How about the church of Laodicea and Revelation 3?
Oh, them too.
Yes. Well, see, when you teach Sabbath school, you got to have the questions. Sadly, they can't answer me out there. Or at least I can't hear them. So, okay, so Revelation 3. Jesus said, I know your deeds, that you're neither hot nor cold, and I wish that you were one or the other. You say, I am rich, I have acquired wealth, and I don't need a thing. But you do not realize you are wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. So what is Jesus' advice to them? He says, I counsel you to buy from me gold refined in the fire, so you can become rich, and white clothes to wear, so you can cover your shameful nakedness, and salve to put on your eyes so that you can see. Now, what I also found interesting is that there in the whole section of the parable of the sower, Jesus talks about they have eyes and they cannot see, and they have ears and they cannot hear. Well, it's kind of interesting that these people can't see, and they need to buy eye salve from Jesus. Though what's interesting is that Laodicea was known for its eye salve for people back in the day.
It was a big trading route hub, and it was known for, this medicinal salve. It came from a plant that grew right around there in the hills of Laodicea. And they were also known for, fine linen and stuff, because that was, again, it was a hub and a trade route.
Yeah, when we did the whole thing on the Church of Laodicea, they were known for raising sheep with black wool.
Yeah.
And so they had a very fine and unusual, of course, black fabric that they had. And so Jesus tells them that they need to buy from him white raiment. And then what was the other thing? Oh, yeah, gold refined in the fire, because this was a wealthy city.
Yep. Which it was the three things they had abundance of. And so, like, he said, you don't have this, you need to buy this from me. And they're like,
yeah, what? We have all this.
Yeah.
We're doing pretty good. So basically, while they might be rich, they cannot afford to buy the stuff that Jesus is telling them that they need to buy, right? Okay, Jesus doesn't say, oh, that's too bad for you, right? Which is kind of how the Jewish people felt about, like, say, the Ninevites or the Canaanites and such like that. Oh, well, too bad for you. You'll never be saved. You're not going to heaven because you're not a Jew.
Yeah.
So he didn't treat them the way the Jews treated their neighbors, right? He didn't treat them the way Jonah treated the Ninevites. He tells them how to have what they cannot do on their own. He says, those whom I love, I rebuke and discipline. So be earnest and repent. Here I am. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with that person and they with me. So when Jesus comes in to eat, right, he creates relationship. And when Jesus comes in to eat, he fills us up. So the problem with the Church of Laodicea was that they were hungry. In their hearts, they are hungry for the things of this world. And so they satisfy themselves with doing more and getting more in order to be more. And this is that's a lot of running around, and hardening of that soil, right, and that path. And so this creates a hard heart because they are living out their own words rather than the words of God. And there's no rain of the Holy Spirit to soften the earth of their hearts because they aren't letting that happen. They aren't paying attention to the words of Jesus. So once again, stewardship of time isn't about squeezing productive activity into every moment of life. It's about putting meaningful life into each activity. Okay, so, we've said recently, actually probably just last week or the week before, that time is the one thing that you spend that you're never going to get back. But after thinking about it this last week, we certainly do get back the time that we have spent, right? Because when we invite Jesus in, he puts life into each activity. All of our time spent for God is that treasure that is stored up in heaven. And our life, our time, invested in eternity. Lived for eternity. And then when we live the letter of the law, when we spend time for self, we may look like hot fire on the outside, right? But on the inside, we are hungry. It keeps us busy, doing good to look good. And so it keeps us getting more stuff to prove our worth. But this is storing up our treasures on earth, and they return to dust. So, stewardship of time isn't about squeezing productive activity into every moment of life. It's about putting meaningful life into each activity.
Yep.
So there you go. I don't know. Maybe you can find something that could be useful for your own Sabbath school.
The sower went out to sow. I've been humming that since you talked about it. Okay, so
Well, if I could sing.
I'm glad I was a lot of help today, but
Oh, he was.
I set the cameras up. Maybe that was my part
well,
today.
and he set us up.
Oh, true. Nice
Yes.
job. All right. Well, I hope you're having a good Sabbath. It's kind of over now. And what you doing for Christmas? We get Christmas break here, and well, let's see. I have one more week of school and then test week. Aspen, what do you have? Same 1 week of school and then test week. And then it's Christmas break.
I have 2 more weeks of fixing lunches.
Yeah, 2 more weeks of fixing lunches.
Oh, 1 week of fixing lunches? Oh, that's right. I don't have to fix lunches during test week. 4 more lunches. That's it until after the first of the year.
Yep. And, for those that know us, a week from tomorrow, if the weather allows, we're going to try and shoot a commercial for the Texas conference. And if that all goes well, maybe we'll show it here on the Salt Channel.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
See. Got to find a few more Pathfinders, but I'm sure they're out there somewhere.
Texas is full of Pathfinders.
Full of Pathfinders, yeah.
That's right.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and hope you have a great week coming up, and we'll